Welcome, everyone, to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. On this channel, we talk all about radical self-respect. You'll learn about narcissism and other toxic behaviors, and you also will get these live streams where you can do some Q&A with me, and all the interviews that I do as well. A lot of stuff going on here, and all the shorts that I do as well. But I might be trying to do less shorts moving forward here. But today, we're going to go over dealing with narcissistic family during the holidays. Since where I am, it's the night before Thanksgiving. And tomorrow, many people that can't be going no contact with the narcissist for whatever reason, maybe because of a family situation, maybe because of a financial situation, maybe it's co-parenting or whatever. So you're going to have to see people that maybe you don't want to see. And then after that, of course, there's Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's. This is the season where this is going to be a thing. But I'm going to give you the guide here. This is your must-watch guide on how to deal with those kinds of scenarios. And of course, we're going to go reiterate some of the other tips and tools that I've talked about before on how to deal with narcissists. But in these cases when, okay, maybe it's somebody that it's not bad enough to go no contact with, but it's just unpleasant, we're going to go over how to deal with that too. Because there's ways. And one of the big things I say to people is you want to have your boundaries in your mind in advance. For example, if there's certain topics that you know they're going to bring up, what are going to be your answers to those questions? That's something you need to know. Jolly, what's shaking over there? We're doing a dysfunctional family, how to deal with them during the holidays breakdown. So knowing your boundaries in advance is humongous. And what's an example of this? Like if you know someone's going to ask you about a breakup or something, have an answer to that question. What are you going to say? Have the answer. My suggestion would be keep it short and brief and then change the subject, right? Or you can even just try to change the subject before you even answer it. But that might cause some trouble sometime too. But how do you change the subject? You can say, well, things just didn't go well. How are you? How are things in your world? What's going on with you? Getting interested about other people, perhaps not because you really care, but as a way to protect yourself and just get the attention off of you. Because ideally, I think that's what you would want in these circumstances here. Don't get too much of the attention on you. You have to find a way to get it out. So they're not going to try to pick at you, poke at you, because that's often what can happen, right? That's why I think having these plans in advance is huge. They'll say half of success is preparation, or the mother of success is preparation. That's where this comes from here. Rhodes, and Rhodes is here too, but shaken. Rhodes says estrangement is undeniably heartbreaking, but the resulting clean conscience and freedom of spirit is well worth the emotional pain and abdication of resources in my experience. Let's read that again to understand it. Estrangement is undeniably heartbreaking, but the resulting clean conscience and freedom of spirit is well worth it. Well, yeah, I mean, when you can do that, when you can go no contact, absolutely. Of course, I'm going to tell you that's the number one thing to do. Before I even go into any of the rest of these tips, if you can be no contact, ideally that's what you would be. If they're bad enough, right? I don't want to say that every single person that's a little bit dysfunctional is bad enough to cut off. Many absolutely are, but will all of them be? Nah, perhaps not. But I can't make that choice for you. That choice is on you. So, and again, in the real world, there can be people that are mildly toxic. They're just a little bit unpleasant. Maybe they're not abusive. So you can use some of these tools when dealing with them too. But what are the tools? Well, we already mentioned one of them. Do not jade. Justify, argue, defend, or explain. So if they're going to try to get you on your back foot, don't play that game. Don't play that game. A good way to handle that also is jujitsu. Jujitsu would be getting it back onto them and asking them about something else. But have your segue into how to go into a new topic there. For example, like I said, if you don't want to talk about a breakup, think about the segue that you're going to use to get out of that circumstance. Or you can just say, I'd rather not talk about this. Or just have something short and sweet, Don't make a big deal out of it and then move on to the next thing. But again, do not shade, justify, argue, defend, or explain. Gray rock, if it's really someone who's really toxic that you would prefer to be no contact with and they're there, I'd probably try to avoid them for the most part. But if you do have to deal with them, gray rock, that's when you're calm, boring, and you don't give any emotional reactions and you keep it very light. Don't overshare with them. Don't share things that you wouldn't want to share. Keep it very brief. That's what I would say to them. Then there's yellow rock. Yellow rock is like gray rock, but with a hint more emotion. I equate it to the way you would talk to the mailman or a server in a restaurant. And again, it's just a way to keep yourself safe, is what I would say. Then there's biff, brief, informative, friendly, and firm. Again, just a way to keep yourself safe in these kinds of situations. What's another one? Seeing them as the emotional 4-year-old or a malfunctioning robot. And that's something I see all of the time too. When you listen to the way narcissistic people and other abusers treat people, it absolutely seems like they're a malfunctioning robot. It really does. And it's wild to hear. I mean, nothing surprises me, but it's still interesting to hear some of the things they try to pull. It's out of control. And I just try to think of it as they're like an emotional 4-year-old. It's like they have that thinking, but just because they're an emotional 4-year-old doesn't make them any less dangerous. They're still dangerous. You still got to take it seriously. But I see them as an emotional 4-year-old to disempower them in your mind. That's why I say that. But so malfunctioning robot, emotional 4-year-old. And then what's the other one? Chat probably knows if they watch the video. But the other one is imagine some ridiculous music playing. Maybe the Curb Your Enthusiasm music, maybe just some music that puts you into a light mood. And I only say this so that you don't get bothered by what they say. That's the goal of this. It's not because they deserve any charitable judgment by you. That's not what they deserve. But this is for you and your safety, is what I would say. So those are the tips on how to deal with them when you can't go no contact, right? Those are the things to do. Don't overshare. Keep it brief. Keep it light. Know your boundaries in advance. Another example of this would be, say someone has a drinking problem and they're going to go to a family function and they don't want to drink because they know they're in recovery, but some of their family drinks and some of the family might be disrespectful and might offer them a drink even if they know they don't drink. How do you handle that situation? So knowing how you would handle that in advance is more than half the battle. I think knowing our boundaries in these situations before they occur is humongous. And also to note, there is no subject you have to talk about if you don't want to. That's another big one. I think a lot of people think, oh, I have to talk about this. No, you don't have to talk about anything. You can simply say, I would not like to talk about this, or I don't want to talk about this, and change the subject. Like, don't linger on it. Move on to the next thing. You're under no obligation to have to share anything that you don't want to share. And that, again, it might sound obvious, but to some people, they probably find themselves oversharing, talking about topics that they don't want to talk about. Why? Well, maybe they're fawning. Maybe they're a little bit of a people pleaser. Maybe they're just conditioned to do that. But I'm here to tell them, no, you don't have to do that. You can say no. You can say, I don't want to talk about this, and they'll live. They'll live. It's not going to be fatal. They're going to be okay. And they're not entitled to hear anything. They're not entitled to hear any of the intimate details of your life. It's no one's business unless you want to share it with somebody. And again, I would be very hesitant, and this goes for anybody. If you don't feel emotionally safe with somebody, don't be sharing anything that's too intimate about yourself with someone that you don't feel emotionally safe with. Because let's face it, narcissistic people, they're going to throw that stuff in your face. They're going to try to use it against you later. They're going to listen for your vulnerabilities and then try to prey on them later. That's what predators do. And this happens. This is one of the big reasons why we say don't go to couples counseling with a predator, because that's what's going to happen there. They're going to listen to what they hear And then they're going to try to use what you say against you later. You don't want to deal with that. Rhodes says, an emotional 4-year-old in a 200-pound, 6-foot construction worker's body can be lethal. I don't play with that shit. I don't blame you for that, Rhodes. Charlie says, exactly. They're not entitled to hear anything about your life. Amen. Say it again, they say. Amen. Say it again. Another thing you might have to deal with is maybe gifts. Now, not as much for Thanksgiving, but during the holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever, people might try to give you gifts. How do you handle that? Well, I would prefer, my rule is, if someone's abused you and you're no contact with them in particular, you don't want to accept any gifts or favors from them because they give with strings attached. And that means they're going to expect something equal or more back in return. Say in a romantic setting, you accept a gift from a dude, and then they're going to think, well, you should of course come out on a date, or you should of course sleep with me because you accepted this gift. Because they keep score. They give you one thing. Okay, you need to do 1 point for me back, if not 10 times more points. That's how they see it. Tit for tat. They keep score. So my thinking is, you just don't accept. You don't want to accept gifts from people that have abused you. Now, in a co-parenting situation, I wouldn't say that means don't let them give your kids gifts. That's different. That's a different story. And granted, sometimes people don't even have to worry about this because the parent is a deadbeat and they don't even give gifts anyway. So it's not even a thing. But depending on the situation, if they're going to give the kids gifts, okay, they give them gifts. Rose says, if you've been raised in a narcissistic family, biting your tongue becomes instinctive. Yeah, I mean, that's how I used to handle it. I just wouldn't share intimate details about myself because I wasn't emotionally safe. So I hid myself. I just wasn't my true self around them. And it wasn't until I was away from them did I feel comfortable to be myself. And this was a landmark thing for me too. A momentous moment in my healing was something that I heard from Meredith Miller. And she had said, I'm pretty sure it was her. And I interviewed her on this channel. For those who don't know, I love Meredith Miller. She's awesome. Check her out. I've learned so much from her. She's the person I learned also, if home wasn't a safe place for you, be very careful with people who feel like home. I learned that from Meredith Miller. But she had said to me, or she said in one of her videos, because we're also friends, her and I, but she had said, if you don't feel comfortable around people and you're afraid to be yourself around somebody, there's probably a good reason for that. And the way she said it, it really got my attention because it hit home. And the reason why it hit home was because in my family growing up, everything was always my fault. Like if there was something wrong, it was never them. It was never their parenting. It was always me. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you like this? Why aren't you like that? Why aren't you more social? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And it just got me on the back foot. So it always made me think something was wrong with me. Like, oh, it must be something wrong with me that I don't want to be myself around them. There must be something wrong with me that I don't like talking to them. There must be something wrong with me that I don't want to spend time with them. And it wasn't until I heard Meredith say that, and I was like, wait a minute. Maybe there wasn't anything wrong with me. Maybe it was just a normal reaction to being around that kind of toxicity. Maybe it was a normal reaction around people that belittle you and put you down and are extremely critical. That was a game changer for me, just getting that shift in perspective. Okay, it was normal to not feel safe and not want to be yourself around people that are like that, which is true, right? Now, it doesn't mean there wasn't other things going on too. For me, there was. I had undiagnosed autism. That was an element of it as well. But again, if they would have ever kind of came at some of this stuff with more of an open mind with it, maybe I would have figured that out sooner. But also at the same point, back in the 90s, when I was a kid, late 80s, 90s, people didn't think about that back then. Back then, people thought you weren't autistic unless you were pretty much nonverbal. That was the level they had it back then. They had no awareness of level 1, 2, 3, higher functioning autism. That wasn't a thing. It got swept under the rug. It went under the radar constantly. So there was a lot of people that just never got diagnosed. Jolly says, there wasn't anything wrong with you, Jared. I went through that crap too. Yep, I totally get it, Jolly. And yes, Rhodes, it was never them. But it got me thinking, though, like when they are so sure it's not them, it got me thinking back then, oh, it must be me. It must be me. And that's why it was such an aha moment when Meredith said that. And I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. It was just a normal reaction. That was a huge step for me in learning how to trust my own perception of reality. That was, I can't understate that enough. It was monumentous, as they would say. But that was really great because back then, I mean, things were different back then. Mac against the machine. Welcome. I had an undiagnosed visual impairment until elementary school after years of spankings. Oh, that's no good either. Visual impairment, huh? How did that turn up? And how are things with you there, Mac against the machine? Not Rage, but Mac against the machine. So what's next with the dealing with dysfunctional family? Well, we dealt with how to deal with answering unwanted questions. We went over if you don't drink, how you're going to handle someone who offers you a drink, avoiding certain topics that you don't want to deal with. And then also just remembering it's just one day. It's one day. And then before you know it, that day is going to be over. And then sometimes it's a fine line where on one hand, yes, I say be prepared for the day, know what your boundaries are going to be, know how you're going to handle certain situations and certain questions. But on the other hand, don't blow it up too much in your head either, because that does have a negative impact. They say worrying is a negative meditation, and I totally get that. Totally. I'm glad you're enjoying your night off, Mac. Significant farsightedness and a lazy eye that they never noticed. And with the eyesight stuff, it's always the opposite, right? So if you're nearsighted, it means you can't see far. And if you're farsighted, you can't see near. My mistakes were unforgivable moral failings. That sounds relatable. Because a lot of times those families have a very strict moral code. Maybe they're religious. Maybe it's just their controlling nature. And as Christian John's family proved, you can also be a spiritual family and have your dad be a spiritual guru, and it can still be toxic. That's got to be a really crazy making experience, right? Because my family wasn't spiritual. My family wasn't religious either. They came from religious families, but they were not themselves. There wasn't an element of that in there as much. They had some of the same tactics, some of the same traits, but not nearly as bad as their parents, etc. But having the spiritual narcissist in the family, they're slippery and tricky because they twist and distort spiritual principles, and they try to use them to their advantage. And they're using it for what? Narcissistic supply so often is what they're using it for. Rhodes says, when I was finally giving glasses and an eye patch, my mom chortled about how she just assumed that her children were perfect. Of course she said that, huh? Didn't fit the image, I guess, right? Didn't fit the image of the way they wanted their family to be. And that's another big thing with the dysfunctional families and narcissistic parents. So much of it is they just don't want to help you to become you. They don't help you to become the best version of yourself. They're leading you, and there's no exploration of you and your interests. And granted, every parent's going to lead a little bit just in the fact that you're raising them, right? You're giving them food, clothes, shelter, etc. Those are the basics, though. But in terms of like figuring out who your child actually is, I think there's a lot of dysfunctional parents that just figure, oh, they're just like me. I was like this. They're going to be just like this. And sometimes that can work. Sometimes, yeah, you are the same blood. So there's a chance you'll be very similar, but it's not always true at all. Right? Sometimes kids are completely different than their parents and they have completely different interests and different temperaments. And then that's where the dysfunctional parents, then you'll really see the toxicity. If you're different than them, then you'll see what kind of parent they really are. Then you'll see, okay, how do they handle it knowing that I'm not just like them? A lot of narcissistic fathers, they're not going to like that one bit. And they're going to try to belittle you and guilt trip you for being different. I've seen that a lot too. Any defect had been beyond consideration. Yeah, that makes sense. Jared. Hi, Jolly. Thanks. I have autism and ADHD, so I change my name and pick all the time. So who are you, Mac Against the Machine? Do I know who you are? Reveal yourself, says the wizard. Yeah, when people change their names, it's hard to keep up with. Like, so Kat changed her name to whatever she changed her name to. Ellie changed her name to whatever she changed her name to, although she's not here right now. George, good old George is always George. And Phil Bradley, even he changed his name too. And he is now late. Late. But here's the thing for you all that are here. What are your questions about dealing with a dysfunctional family during the holidays? What are your questions about? What are your concerns about it, I should say, as well? Like, what are the things that make you upset? What are the things that you worry about a little bit? I would like to hear those. Jared, I met you as Blame Mac. Okay. I think I remember seeing that name. George, he'll be around. Or if not, he'll get a demerit if he's not around. That's funny. I try to think what would get to me. What gets to me in these dynamics. I mean, and half of it is just the dread going into it. That's why I say worrying is a negative meditation, where we can build it up in our heads a little bit. And sometimes justifiably so. If someone's really mistreated us, disrespected us, abused us, of course, we're not going to like that. And again, ideally, you wouldn't have to deal with them anyway. Ideally, just no contact. But sometimes life's outside of our control and you have to make some tough choices. I think the toughest choices come when, like, if you go to the family function, there's people that you would be no contact with that are going to be there. So it's either you skip the entire function or you maintain no contact. Which one are you going to do? That's up to you. And I would say if it's bad enough, you take care of you. You take care of you regardless of what they think about it. And the people that are really on your team and care about you, they're going to understand. They'll understand. The people that don't understand, that's a different story. And these situations, they come up at funerals too, for example. That's probably one of the tougher ones because a lot of narcissistic people, they love funerals because they know it's either you pay respect to this mutual loved one or you maintain no contact with this certain family member. It's a tough call. It's a tough call. I can't tell anyone what they should or shouldn't be doing in that case, unless I hear the situation. Rhodes says, truthfully, I don't have any questions about dealing with these types as I've been resourceful enough to get away from them, giving huge thanks for that this year. That's a great thing to be thankful for. I love to hear that because that makes it easy. When you don't have to deal with them, that's the easiest of all, right? You don't have to deal with a thing. And ultimately, that's the beauty of friends. And that's why Friendsgiving can be so cool too, is because friends are the family you choose for yourself. That's what friends are. No one chooses their family. Your family is your family. And that's why there's so many conflicts in the family because you didn't choose them. They're there. And there can be differences in temperament, differences in likes, differences in political views. And that's another one to go over. Even political stuff can become a big thing during the holidays now, too. Oh, eternally lit. I'm in this position tomorrow. So, what are your thoughts on this? What are the things that you are worried about or thinking about, I should call it? Jolly says, two narcs in my family are dead now. There's my daughter and my older sister is BPD, but she reminds me of a narc. I have little to do with them. That sounds like a smart move, Jolly. And yeah, and the BPD people, they can be pretty similar to narcissists a lot of times. I mean, they are in the same cluster after all. And according to Dr. Salerno, he would say 60% of the time they can be comorbid. Christian John disagrees. Christian John would say it's a completely different operating system. And to which I would say, I think there's a lot of borderlines that are misdiagnosed and they should really be narcissists. I think that's the thing too. So Eternally says, I have a huge standoff with my stepmom about parenting. She wants to use food as a punishment and force feed. That doesn't sound very good. And since I don't, she won't help get my daughter to school and said a bunch of rude things about my dad. Says he'll be pissy if I don't go tomorrow. So what's that? That's a guilt trip, manipulation, holding things over your head. So let me see if I understand this. So your stepmom, and how old is your stepmom? And she wants to punish you or punish your daughter? I guess the question is, who does she want to force feed? She wants to force feed you? Yeah, Jolly, it's a thing. I mean, I think there's a lot of misdiagnosed because there's some of these people that say they're borderline. It sure seems like they're narcissists. That's what I would say. Borderline's a different thing. Borderlines, I think, they can be volatile and they can be ridiculous and they can be abusive, but it's still different than narcissists. I'll put it like that. Max says, my sister is a narcissist, but she is a nice person, so I don't have it as bad as others, thankfully. All right, well, that's something to be thankful for then. And then Internally says, while taking childcare from me and not being around her, no, my daughter, ain't nobody force feeding me, lol. So why does she want to force feed your daughter? It's like she's someone that thinks she's like too thin or something? And she's just trying to be like, oh, she's too thin. She needs to eat. She's like Mrs. Claus to Santa Claus in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Yeah, because they're basically a boomer. Like your stepmom's a boomer parent, basically. The tail ends of the boomers. And they just make ridiculous stands, is one of the things that I've noticed. Old school beliefs, don't waste your food. Yep. For the kids in Africa, they'll say. I saw a meme the other day. Aragon, eat your vegetables for Africa. Rhodes says BPD is undeniably one of the most frequently and frustratingly misdiagnosed conditions in the DSM. I could see that. I mean, there's so many things about, I mean, people would say undiagnosed autism can look very similar to BPD. CPTSD can look similar to BPD. ADHD, even in some cases, can look similar to BPD. Bipolar, in some cases, can look similar to BPD. In fact, bipolar is probably one of the most common misdiagnoses for borderline. So people will think, because a borderline person, they go up and down. They're on an emotional roller coaster. There's a lot of emotional volatility. And that looks a lot like bipolar or bipolar 2. So a lot of times that's what they get misdiagnosed as. But one of the clues it's not borderline, or excuse me, one of the clues it's not bipolar is the meds don't really help that much. Like the meds help maybe a very little bit, but the core issues are still there because the medicines, they don't really help personality disorders. They can help mood disorders, but they're not treating personality disorders. They're treating the mood. They're treating anxiety. They're treating depression. That's a different thing. So when you give someone that's borderline a mood stabilizer, it might help a little bit, but that core issue is still going to be there, and they're still going to have maybe suicidal idealizations. They might still want to cut themselves, self-harm. There's all sorts of things that it might be. No, force feeding children's no good. Absolutely no good. And it was so common in my age group growing up. Eat your vegetables or you're going to your room. And what they would say is, and I actually kind of agree with this now, you're teaching your kids to not trust their body when you say that. Like when they're full and you try to force them to finish because of the kids in Africa, like you're teaching them to ignore their thoughts and feelings about things. You're teaching them to shut down and do what others tell you, regardless of how you feel. And that's setting up your kids for a disaster. Now, granted, there's nuance to everything. Like if a kid's not eating at all, well, that's a problem too, right? That's a different problem. And that's one of the issues with generalized advice. You don't know, because there can always be an exception to generalized advice. There's always a caveat where I would say, oh, well, in this situation, I wouldn't say to do that. But in this situation, I would say, yeah, if it's a a healthy kid, and if they're full, they're full. Okay, that's fine. We can save it for later. But this is just another example of the boomer parents and their parents. They'll make these stupid stands. You must eat that or you're going to be grounded for a week. And it's like, dude, like, why are you making a mountain out of a molehill here? Like, you're being ridiculous. Like, that's how I see it now. But so many of the issues, that's what it was. Making mountains out of molehills and telling people to not trust themselves in their body. Think about what kind of terrible message that is for your kids. Oh, yeah, don't trust yourself. Don't trust how you're feeling. It's wrong how you're feeling. And like that's what they're saying, right? Oh, you're full? Well, it's wrong to feel full. You should ignore that. You should ignore that and eat anyway. Now, a different lesson would be there is times when you have to do things you don't want to do. Like not everyone wants to go to school, but guess what? Sometimes you got to go to school. Just like with work. Oh, you don't feel like it, but sometimes there's benefits in doing things you don't feel like doing. Wisdom is knowing which lesson applies. So in the full lesson, no, I don't think that applies. But like say you don't feel like working out. Well, most of the time, you're better off pushing through that most of the time. Now, if you're addicted to working out, there might be more value in learning how to take a couple of days off. Like I've been in that situation too, where I'm hooked on working out and it takes a lot for me to say, no, stop, listen to your body and give yourself a break. I missed some questions here. Yes, it's a common thing, Jolly, with borderline and BPD. Rhodes says, exactly, Jared. A person with BPD who is mistakenly diagnosed with bipolar disorder may be prescribed mood stabilizers and antipsychotics that are less effective for the primary condition. Correct. I know that because that was part of my story too. They used to give me antipsychotics back in the day. But thankfully for you all, your favorite wizard has a good supplement routine that's really helped him. None of these prescriptions. Not that I hate on prescriptions per se, but for me, I'm glad I found something that works for me. While missing out on the specialized evidence-based therapy that is most effective for BPD, such as DBT. Correct. Dialectical behavioral therapy, for those who don't know. Exactly, I ended up being someone who overate. Yeah, I could see that. No, I don't say I could see that. I could see that happening. That's what I should say. Yes, my home, it was clean. Your plate or sit there all night. Yes. Broccoli and cheese was my worst nemesis back then. That was something I hated, but they would always try to force me to eat it. It was a battle. My least favorite time. Slave master relationship obey and stuff. Oh, yes. The narcissistic parents, they love to be the king of the castle. Or they'll say it's good to be king, it's good to be queen, and they're not even being ironic about it either. Yikes, Jolly. That's brutal. At least stick it in the fridge and have it for breakfast, like Matthew McConaughey's parents enforced. Matthew McConaughey is a cool guy. I've liked some of his podcasts on Chris Williamson or Joe Rogan. He's got a book called Green Lights. Actually, I would like to read that book. I haven't read it yet, but I think it's probably a good book. Just wear a garlic necklace to keep the vampires away. Right? And everything he's saying, I shared with them and said, no, I won't read anything of that. But I was hoping for advice. She's hoping Thanksgiving. So what I said in the beginning of this is there's the tools. There's the tools. And a big part of it is knowing your boundaries in advance, whatever they need to be. So if you know she's going to try to force feed your daughter, have your thoughts about that ready so that you know what you're going to say and say like, no, like you're not doing this. But whatever it is, I don't know the situation. That's just one possible suggestion. But figure it out what you're going to say. Know what your boundaries are in advance and know how you're going to handle certain topics when you have to deal with them. And of course, don't jade, justify, argue, defend, or explain. Use gray rock when necessary. That's when you're calm and boring. You don't give any emotional reactions. Yellow rock is gray rock with a hint more emotion. Think how you would talk to the mailman or a server in a restaurant. Or there's Biff, brief, informative, friendly, and firm. Also, for your own sake, to disempower them, see them as an emotional 4-year-old or a malfunctioning robot. That pretty much is what they are. I mean, granted, they're an emotional 4-year-old that has really dangerous potential. But seeing them as the emotional 4-year-old is just a way to disempower them in your mind. So you're better able to keep your peace and to protect yourself. And then they can also play the ridiculous music. Think Curb Your Enthusiasm theme song. Maybe think SpongeBob. Whatever it is, to find a way to make it so that you are in a better internal place with it. It was our stepfather who was the force feeder on our house. No one else in my family was like him. Yeah, force feeding is the worst. Fried okra. Ooh. Adam ain't right. I won't be invited to Thanksgiving again this year or next, so it really doesn't matter anymore. My mother is most certainly a grandiose, malignant, and malicious covert, and straight up overt narcissist. That sounds like a very bad trifecta. Try to keep it up, keep it brief. I agree, Jolly. I agree. I mean, so much of it is preparation, like knowing how you're going to handle certain things. I don't like being blindsided. Being blindsided is the worst. And that's when people go on their back foot. And then they're more likely to jade, justify, argue, defend, or explain. Not good. And that's probably smart. You want to stay in your wits. Absolutely. My husband and I decided to opt out of the holidays. I picked up extra work, and my grown kids are going to their in-laws' friends. Worked out for everyone. I don't give a fuck where my parents are going. Hey, that's you taking care of yourself. I love that. And that's the thing. When we're adults, we can do that. We're under no obligations to do some of these things. Like some of these suggestions I'm saying is when there's no choice. Like, because ideally, you would be able to do something like that. You won't even have to go. But I just know that's not going to be possible for everybody. So that's why we have a stream like this. Damn, Artist Creek. I would fix my daughter's plate, making certain there wasn't too much food for her to eat and only what she wants or likes to eat. Make sense? After last year, I will never invite my parents to a holiday again. It took me over 50 years to say enough is enough and not let the guilt make me do things that aren't going good for me. Yeah, I love that. It's like a good example of practicing radical self-respect. And Eternally says, well, for better or worse, they gave life to us. They did. They did. I mean, here's the thing. There's the 3 stages of healing, right? The first stage of healing from narcissistic abuse is understanding narcissism, getting awareness of what happened to you, and putting a name to it. That's the stage where everyone gets addicted to the content because it's the most validating thing they've heard for a while. The most validating thing they've heard in maybe years because someone is sharing to them exactly what happened. Oh, that's right. I was gaslit. Oh, they were deflecting. Oh, they were using Darvo. Oh, or they were just always blaming me for their problems. And you begin to know, okay, this is what was going on. And you learn about narcissism, you learn about the toxic behaviors. And in the process of doing this, you try to unsubscribe from their distorted version of reality. And granted, the education is first, I have found. That really helps the process of unsubscribing, in my opinion. And one of the best ways to try to unsubscribe, no contact. Space. Space is so essential, I think, for beginning that unsubscribing process because when you're in the environment that made you sick, it's just 1,000 times more difficult. I'll never say impossible, but it's just 1,000 times more difficult when you're still in that environment. It's like you need that space to begin, to really get that freedom from them and how they think. But that's number one, learning all about narcissism and toxic behaviors and unsubscribing from their distorted perception of reality and learning to trust your own perception of reality, learning to trust your gut. Then to step two. Step two is when maybe you'll take a look at your side of the street. And that's when I asked myself the question, for me, what could I have done differently to prevent this situation? And my answer was at the time, well, I should have practiced radical self-respect. I overlooked disrespect and I overlooked red flags. Why did I do that? Well, I was addicted to how this person made me feel about myself, and I didn't want to be alone. And I just didn't have the sense of self-worth at the time to do what was best for me for those reasons. Will that be what it is for everybody? No, but that's what I learned from me. So again, because no one's perfect, but just the fact that no one's perfect doesn't mean what happened to you is your fault. More than one thing can be true at the same time. So, and the importance of looking at our side of the street is that's where the growth is, right? So, because ideally, what's the end goal? The end goal is to completely disempower the narcissist, remember the lesson, forget the person, so that then you are completely unsubscribed from them. They have no relevance over your life anymore. And you just don't even think about them anymore. But then once you do that, what are you left with? You're left with yourself. And so then you're the only person to work on now. And almost with everybody, there's something they can be working on. Maybe it's developing a sense of self-worth. Maybe it's not being a people pleaser. Maybe it's learning to trust their gut. There's always something. But again, that doesn't mean they're disordered. That doesn't mean what happened to them was their fault. More than one thing can be true at the same time. But the reason I even started saying this was because the last step, letting go of resentment. And I don't say forgiveness, even though forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I don't like telling people they should forgive. But I do think letting go of resentment is helpful because if we remain resentful, the only person we're hurting is ourselves. And so why are we going to rob ourselves of joy, peace, and happiness because we're resentful about what happened? I don't think that's really helpful. But again, everyone is going to do that at their own pace. Everyone's going to do what they think is best for them. I will say, don't let anyone tell you you should forgive. Or no, you must forgive. To me, trying to force somebody to forgive is coercion. Screw that. And don't let anyone tell you forgiveness means you have to let someone back into your life too. That's not what it means either. You can forgive from afar just for yourself. But again, it's totally up to you. Don't let anyone tell you this is what you should or shouldn't be doing with it. The only thing I will say is finding a way to let go of resentment. And that is a place where I am with it now, where I look at it now, and I was able to pull out some positives that really helped me today. But again, though, I don't talk about that very much because that's a step 3. That's a level 3 of healing category. My husband was murdered 4 years ago, so I take most of it in stride. I'm grateful. I'm here to argue. Well, I'm very sorry to hear that, eternally. That's not very good. Yeesh. How are you holding up with that? You can be grateful for your life and still not allow family to disrespect and hurt you. Amen. 100%. Jolly says, I've worked holidays just to avoid going to family's home for Thanksgiving. You sound just like me, Jolly. I would take my kids to work with me too. They loved it. I was a bar manager in a hotel with a restaurant. That's actually a fun time. I used to work in restaurants too. And maybe you can relate to this too, Jolly, but there was something about working in restaurants that I really liked because I didn't get that social overwhelm of having to be social, but I was able to sometimes be social a little bit and then work. And I liked the temporary aspect of it too. It wasn't a prolonged thing with any one group of people. It was like, no, you have your staff there. And people do in a restaurant, it's like a family. And you're working together in these intense conditions. There's all sorts of angry customers out there, and they get the dinner rush. And it's a sense of community you have with that. And I really liked that. And the same thing with the taxi driver too. I was able to have many social sessions, I'll call them, where you talk to people in the car for a while, then you drop them off, then it's over. So I liked that. I liked, it's over. It's over after a time. I liked it. Mama Black Sheep, glad you're here. Unsubscribing is the way to go. I will let go of resentment when they stop doing it. I can be angry and demon both. So well, how are they still doing it if you no contact with them? Church is tragic. I'm close to. I've seen many of your shorts and really think you have a lot of insight on family dynamics in this community. Oh, well, I'm happy to help. I'm working to unsubscribe from her, minimize her. I do not want to forgive. I have already spent half my life forgiving. I don't think I should have to. Yes, I agree. I don't tell anyone to forgive. Like I said, sometimes I say letting go of resentment can be helpful, but at the same time, ironically, I see. I'd say ironically, you got to feel it to heal it. So that means what? If you're angry, let yourself feel the anger. You feel sad, you let yourself feel the sadness. You feel grief, you feel the grief. Whatever the feelings are, you feel them. And then when you felt everything you could, then you'll be left with, okay, where am I? And of course, if someone's actively abusing you still, then no, that's not, you don't want to deal with that at all. That's a bad situation. But once there's space, and again, depending on the situation, I was able to get into that place because for the very most part, the stuff stopped for the very most part. So that helped. That helped me. Recorded this yesterday, Phil Bradley. Actually, this is from the future. I recorded this on Thanksgiving Day, and I am replaying it the day before. But also, what I'm going to try to do, I might be trying to do more longer videos and more interviews as well. Try to wean people maybe off of the shorts. But again, as long as people come to the longer form content from the shorts, that's great. But the advice from the YouTube folks is you should separate the shorts from the channel because they say the shorts will hurt your long form views, they say. I don't know if that's true. I think for me, as I build using the shorts, I have noticed you get more longer form views too. That's me though. But I don't know. I don't know if that would be that way for everybody. But we'll see. I might have to like experiment for some new things here. And here's another question for you all. What kinds of topics would you like to hear more about? Yeah, I think, and that's part of the reason why I still do them is because people do find me that way. And then they come here too, right? So you're here now. So you're a testament to Shorts working, right? Shorts got you from that was like the advertisement for the channel, and now you're here. So that's great. I love being the exception to their rules there. I like that. Coercive control. I mean, coercive control is what? Coercive control is what Dr. Cochiola, that's her favorite word with it. But it's also narcissistic abuse. I mean, they're almost synonymous, in my opinion. They're pretty much like if you say coercive control versus narcissistic abuse, what would you say the difference is? Is there a difference, do you think? Coercive control versus narcissistic abuse? I'd say they're close enough so that you could pretty much use them interchangeably. Because if someone's talking about narcissistic abuse, you could easily say coercive control and you'd be saying the same thing. And if you said someone was being coercively controlled, could you also say narcissistic abuse? I guess you could say, I don't know if coercive control would include the tearing down of somebody for their own sense of self-worth. But I would say usually, right? Usually it would. Now, Lundy Bancroft, he would say, he makes a big distinction. He says, not all narcissists, or excuse me, he says, not all abusers are narcissists. And I would say, okay, maybe. Does it really matter, though? Does it really matter? I don't think it really matters. I think it's the behaviors that matter. If you want to say an abuser is different than a narcissist, fine. But what I will say about Lundy Bancroft, I like the fact that he sees through the BS in ways that a lot of licensed professionals don't. Now, he says a couple things that I think could be a little bit invalidating to men that have been victimized. But outside of that, if you're able to handle that part, a lot of the other things he says are absolutely eye-opening and are very helpful. Jolly says, I enjoy the shorts and the longer discussions. Sometimes it's easier to watch your shorts and later watch your interviews and discussions. Yeah, I appreciate the feedback there, Jolly. I think you're right. Familial manipulation and methods to manage family so you don't have to cut them out. Oh, that's a very good one. That's something you don't hear very much about. Well, one thing it would be you have to be in a good spot. That's number one. So you don't want to still be in a trauma bond with them to even try to do that. But once you've unsubscribed, you're in a good spot, then maybe you can come back as a stronger version of yourself and you know your boundaries. You know what topics you want to stay away from. You know to not jade, justify, argue, defend, or explain. And most importantly, you trust yourself. You trust yourself now. And maybe that means also limiting the contact, not going in as much depth with them anymore. These are the ways to not have to cut them out. And that's honestly, that's what I've done in my own life. There's a couple people in the family I don't talk to at all, but with others, I've limited the contact. I don't have as much depth with them. And that still works. That still works. Yeah, in my situation, they're one and of the same techniques, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, you're probably not going to get too much pushback if you say coercive control is the same as narcissistic abuse. Some people might try to say that narcissistic abuse is worse, maybe. But I don't know. Oh, that's her tears me down because she can? Yeah. Well, that's the self-esteem regulation with somebody with like using another person. So they tear that other person down and it regulates themselves. And narcissists have literally told me that too. They'll say, I'll pick fights with somebody when I want to relieve stress, when I want to blow off steam. I'll go pick a fight. They'll pick a fight. They'll be antagonistic. They'll be combative. And then it will literally soothe them. So know that's what's going on with it too. When they're baiting you and provoking you and being antagonistic, just know they like it. And what they like most of all is when they really get under your skin and then you give them a big emotional reaction. They love that the most of all, because the bigger a reaction they can get out of you, the more powerful it makes them feel. Because they're saying to themselves, I have this much control over this other person's emotional state. That makes me feel powerful. But what would make them feel not powerful? The opposite: indifference. Indifference, they would not like one bit, because that doesn't make them feel powerful. Narcissists love positive and negative reactions. Their kryptonite: indifference. That they can't stand that. I hate that when they do that, pick fights. Yeah, I mean, they do it. They do it. And it always comes around, right? And that's a good way to determine the level of severity, in my opinion, because I talk about the narcissistic operating system all the time. Well, there's less severe narcissistic operating systems, moderately severe, and then very severe. So what I would say is the less severe versions, they'll have maybe more good days, but eventually they'll still do the cycle of picking fights. But it just doesn't happen all of the time. It might just be pretty sporadic. But that's only the less severe version. Moderate version happens more so. And then the more severe versions, there can still be good days, but when there's bad days, those days are bad as can be. And the blow-ups are completely out of control, demoralizing, just completely controlling and abusing, physical abuse, SA, you name it. That's what's going on with the severe versions. It's out of control. But that's a good way to determine the level of severity in the narcissistic operating system. I mean, and that's something that you don't hear too much about, right? When we talk about narcissism in the space, we talk about generalities a lot of times. We'll say the narcissist or narcissists do this. And when we say that, yeah, I acknowledge we're missing a little bit of the nuance when we say that. The problem is, if you try to break it down into too much nuance at the base level, you're going to lose people. No one's going to listen to you anymore because you're putting too many qualifiers in there. But we say the narcissist because it's a good placeholder word to describe a group of behaviors a lot of people have experience with. That doesn't mean every narcissist is exactly the same. It doesn't mean they're all the same level of severity. It doesn't mean there's not different types. There are, and there's different scenarios, but you can't explain everything in every single video. Right? You have to work with it a little bit. So you'll say the narcissist, and you'll say something that a lot of narcissists do. Will every narcissist do that? No, they won't, but many will. But the people who don't understand that, they'll say, oh, my narcissist didn't say that. My narcissist didn't do that, so you're wrong. It's like, no, many narcissists do this. I'm not wrong. It just means that your scenario was a little bit different. The other thing they'll mess up a lot is they'll say, oh, you're saying I'm a narcissist because I do that behavior? And I was like, well, it really depends, doesn't it? Because just because I say a narcissist does a behavior doesn't mean everyone who does that behavior is a narcissist, for one. And secondly, it all depends on the context. And a great example of this is I made a video about when the narcissist says they want to be alone. And that's a good one to go over. When the narcissist says they want to be alone, what does that mean? It means they don't want to not be alone. It means they just don't want to be with you. And it means they want to go be with their other source of supply, or they're too busy love bombing somebody else. That's what it means. And the pushback I was getting on that was, oh, I've told my partner I wanted to be alone because I really wanted to be alone. And I was like, well, then it doesn't apply to you. You're not a narcissist. I'm saying when the narcissist says they want to be alone, that's what they mean. They don't really mean they want to be alone. That's for sure. They want to be anything but alone. It just means that you aren't working as the source of supply that you once were. So they want to move forward and love bomb somebody else or do one of their other addictions. That's what it means. The creating the drama is one of their favorites because they have that emptiness on the inside. They get bored very easily. And one of the ways they'll stimulate their boredom is by gossiping or telling other people, oh, this person said this negative thing about you. This person said that negative thing about you. And sometimes when they do that, they're just telling on themselves. That's what they think. But other times, no. Other times, other people did really say those things. Because let's face it, if you have a dysfunctional family, a narcissistic family, often there's more than one dysfunctional person in that family. There's often many. So it's very not surprising to think, sure, there could be all sorts of people talking trash. There could be all sorts of people triangulating with one another. A narcissist like that, because especially if those other people are talking negatively about you, it gives them a sense of supply. And especially when they tell you about it, they'll get a sadistic sense of glee. If you feel uncomfortable, they'll feed off of that for sure. But this is just another dynamic in the dysfunctional family here, right? They got those triangles, the drama, the flying monkeys, ganging up on people. And all of this is doubly so if there's a business or a lot of money at stake. That happens too. I mean, some of the flying monkeys become the worst when they're vying for the one narcissistic parent's attention or favor because there's a business at stake or an inheritance at stake. Holy mackerel. Those are some rough situations. And that happens all the time. And some of those families are the ones that they might appear to have it together on the outside, but on the inside, behind closed doors, it's a completely different story. But I think the biggest takeaway, though, with dealing with a dysfunctional family is don't get sucked in. Don't get sucked into their emotional engagements because it's just not worth it. Now, the only time I would say to not listen to that is if it involves your kids or there's some red line that you have. There are some times you're going to have to put your foot down. There are some times when you should say no. So then you master the art of being assertive and being brief. So you use BIF. Right? You'll be assertive. You put your foot down. Don't over-explain, but you keep it direct, firm, and assertive, and you stick to your guns because there are times when this is going to be necessary. This is also true if you're dealing with narcissists in the workplace. There are times you're going to have to put your foot down. There's times if you're co-parenting with a narcissist, you're going to have to put your foot down and say, no, this is not what's going to happen. Like, this is just not going to be. And they might try to fight you on it. In fact, almost without a doubt, they'll try to fight you on it, but you don't get sucked in. You keep it firm, you keep it assertive, but you keep it brief. And again, each narcissistic person, their tactics are going to be a little bit different. And even me, like what happens to me sometimes is I'll be talking to people on social media and you don't think they're that way at first, but then you get into a discussion with them. Maybe you're disagreeing about something. And then before you know it, you start seeing some of these tactics out there and you're like, holy mackerel, what the hell's going on here? And they can kind of sneak up on you a little bit. Like I was saying the other day on the stream when I was talking about that Andrew Wilson video, and I called him out for having a defensive reaction because the woman told him the truth and said, oh yeah, your wife has 3 baby daddies, which is true. And he lost his mind and started calling her names and everything, which was childish and ridiculous. But this other person was saying to me, oh, this shows how there's a lopsided narrative on narcissism where people are going to call out the man and they're going to overlook the female's bad behavior, the woman's bad behavior. And the guy was like, it wasn't a chess move by her. It was a narcissistic tactic for her to say that. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, she thinks that since Andrew Wilson is a religious person and doesn't believe in promiscuity, she was trying to prove her worldview to him. And her worldview was she doesn't care if someone is a stepdad. She doesn't care if someone is promiscuous. So when she brought that up, she thought she was demonstrating Andrew Wilson's hypocrisy. I thought that was pretty clear to see. You might disagree with it. You might disagree with that take, especially since Andrew Wilson's wife was married to the people she had kids with. But that wasn't really the point. She's trying to say that Andrew Wilson is in a glass house throwing rocks. A fair point to try to make. Maybe she lost the debate later on, but this person was furious that I wasn't, I guess, agreeing with him that this was a good example of female narcissism in action. It's like, dude, of all of the people, of all of the times to point out female narcissism, you're going to pick this clip of Andrew Wilson acting like an idiot? To me, it was just tone deaf of this person. And then they called me a pathological narcissist. They told me I shouldn't be helping anybody. They told me they're disgusted by me. I'm an embarrassment. I'm limited mentally. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I just don't agree that this is a good time to point out this woman's, what you call narcissistic tactics. It's like, dude, they're having a debate. They're having a debate. Just because you don't win a debate doesn't mean you're using narcissistic tactics. So the guy, to me, is just a fool, a tone-deaf fool this person was, and they just didn't get it. I was like, dude, there's better opportunities to call out women. This is not it. Like, you're going to choose this clip of Andrew Wilson acting like an idiot to try to make this stand? And he even agreed with me that Andrew Wilson was being an idiot, but he just couldn't get it. He couldn't get the fact that this just wasn't a good time. He wanted me to try to defend the woman's debate tactics. It's like, none of that's even the point. None of that's the point, her debate tactics. I don't care. Like, she made a point that she thought was a good point. That's not a narcissistic tactic. Rhodes says, I love the distinction George Simon makes between assertiveness and aggression. I remember reading about that. I think, was it in Character Disturbance or was it in Sheep's Clothing? Narcissistic parents will label every attempt at individuation as aggression. I didn't want to be aggressive. Yes, they will punish you. Because to me, another word for individuation is developing your autonomy. And they don't like that one bit. Your autonomy threatens them for several reasons. One reason is maybe you'll become something that they don't think reflects well on the image of the family. That's one version of the threat. Another one is now you're just not as easily controllable anymore. If you individuate, you're no longer enmeshed with them. Now it's not as easy to control you anymore. They don't like that either. So there's a lot of threats. It's a threat to their power and control when a child individuates from their parents. Now, a point of debate would be, and I don't think Dr. Salerno would agree with this, but the Sam Vaknin method would be, that's what narcissism is. The narcissist is someone that never individuated from their parents. In particular, the mother, I think is what Sam Vaknin would say. And that's what happens. I don't think Dr. Salerno agrees with that, though. Dr. Salerno would not agree with that. But that's what Sam Vaknin says. And even Dr. K, I think Dr. K would agree with that too. Because again, like when you have that baseline, that's what Sam Vaknin thinks is going on. Grandiosity to cover up insecurity. Dr. K thinks it's jealousy, followed by acting out, followed by being guilty and feeling guilty about it. I don't think that's what was going on either. One, it's not jealousy. I think it's envy. Envy is the right word he should be using. Envy is when you want something somebody else has. Jealousy is when you're afraid to lose something you already have. Different things. But I just don't think guilt is the core as much as Dr. K was saying it is. And this is the other part about it. If they truly had guilt and shame, they wouldn't continue acting out the way they do. If they really had shame, they would do something different, I would say. But the fact that they're not, it's like, how much guilt and shame can they really have? Mama Black Sheep, I agree with you. And that's why I called out Dr. K with that. It's just the old school view. I shouldn't say I called him out. I just disagreed with him. But he's got the old school view of it, where that's the Sam Vaknin school. It's the Dr. Mark Eatonson school. It's the even old school Dr. Romney, I think, would say those kinds of things too. But that's just what they were taught. Now, the difference is the people that don't update their thinking, because there is new research now. I think Dr. Simon agrees they've underestimated the biological component. They can't deny that now. And Dr. Campbell, as he would say, this also proves the point. Parenting is important, but it doesn't make much of a difference. Why would you say something like that? Well, to me, that speaks to the genetic component of what's going on. A big element of personality is your genetics. And then you know what else that means? To me, it means also there's a lot of people who blame a patriarchal system. There's a lot of people that blame society for how men turn out in particular, or for the bad things that happen to women. And I would say, well, environment plays a part, but I think the biggest part is not that. The biggest part is the biology. And I think also your parents have way more of an impact on how their kids turn out than society does, I think. I think genetics is number one. But after that, I think your parents have more influence than society as a whole. Now, you can consider parents an element of society, but I don't know. I just never bought that thing. I don't know. But I do think genetics is an aspect of it. I think, because here's the thing. I just don't see, like, some people will say men are conditioned to like disrespect and abuse women. And I just don't know if I buy that. I'm not denying that it absolutely happens. I'm not denying there's people that don't get abused. Of course they do. Of course I know. And religion, definitely. Genetics, of course. Yes, that's what I would say. And so, what was I saying? No, I just don't see the conditioning outside of religious, maybe, of men telling women, or like people raising their sons to say, yes, go abuse these women. It's like, I don't see that. I see people who are just abusive anyway, that have that genetic component, and then they turn into the abusers. I see that. So I guess I don't blame as much environment as some people do. Now, there's room for disagreement on that, of course. There's people that they've made their whole livelihoods on focusing on that environmental component. But here's the thing I'll say about the environmental component. I think people take solace in it because it seems more controllable. So if narcissism is created because of childhood trauma, for example, it's like, okay, there's more of a clear path to what happened. Oh, my parents did this. It was childhood trauma. And then I turned into a narcissist. Like, I think that there's something about that that makes people feel better, because it seems like it's more controllable, I guess, or maybe more preventable even. But the genetic component, I think there's something about it that doesn't seem as interesting. And so when you listen to Sam Vaknin, for example, and he goes into the environmental component, the lack of individuation, there's something interesting about it. It's interesting, it's educational, it's entertaining. You can kind of really do a deep dive on it. When you say it's more of the biological component in genetics, it's like, that's all you say. Like, that's it. Okay. A big part of it's genetics. Now what? Now what do you talk about? But when you talk about the environment piece, there's endless amounts of things to talk about because now you can talk about the mother, the father, the upbringing, the enmeshment, the parentification, all of the other tactics. You could talk about it all. When it comes to the genetic thing, you could say, well, what do you talk about then? I guess what you would talk about is trying to help people learn about narcissism sooner so they don't mate with narcissists. I try not to blame in general. That's a form of triangulation. Cluster Bs triangulate. Um, generally, I would say to people, you're always better off like looking to your side of the street first before you blame too much. But that being said, there is certainly things that need to be called out sometimes too. I think it could be both. But me personally in my own life, I can acknowledge there's things that are certainly wrong with the system. But the way I live my life is I focus more on me because that's the only person I can change. I can try to change me. I can have much more influence over me than I can the system at large. And that's my issue with the people that only focus on the systems. To me, it's just too big of an issue. It's too big of an issue to focus that much on it. Now, granted, I do think it's good that some people are focusing on it. I think somebody needs to, but I'd rather work on me because I want to see the results in my own life. But some people, when they go too much into the blaming of the systems category, their life can kind of go nowhere. They get stuck because if they're always blaming this big bad system, then what are they not doing? When you're blaming, what are you not doing? You're probably not improving yourself anymore. You're probably not growing as much in your own life. The only exception to this would be if you're a content creator that does this, like you're blaming, well, you're actually turning it into a business. You're turning into a business now. So that would be the exception. But the viewers, they're probably not turning it into a business. And that is one of my problems with the lefty creators, the lefties of the world. And don't get me wrong, I don't disagree with many of the things they say. I think the problem is they keep the people that listen to them stuck sometimes. I do think that happens too. It's wonderful regarding toxic family that everyone says leave the past behind, but then you get to hear about everyone else's family thousands of times during every holiday. Good times. Huh. So who's everyone else's family? So whose family do you get to hear about? Just people online, you mean? What do they say? The Russians have a great saying about that. They say, if you dwell on the past, you lose an eye. But if you forget the past, you lose both eyes. Oh, I just mean I've had to completely. Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's totally understandable. Dude, I saw my friend Kelly sent me this video that Adriana Bucci, who I've interviewed twice on the channel here, she was saying that there's a bill or there's this petition on LinkedIn that had 400 and something signatures. They're trying to make it illegal for people like yours truly to promote going no contact with family. And they're blaming us, the creators, for separating families, for tearing families apart. And I'm like, talk about blame shifting, man. Like, if people are going no contact, and sure, like I talked about with Dr. Salerno, there are some kids that are cluster B. There are some narcissistic kids out there that might be doing some nonsense. That's true. But at the same time, all anyone can do is look at their side of the street. If, and so often people want to go straight to the blame, but many times, if a kid has cut you off and you're a parent, often there's something to take a look at there. Often, not always, often. So the very fact, though, that that group of people is like, no, we're not going to take a look at our side of the street. We're going to try to shut down those creators to not tell people to go no contact. That's the problem, not their behavior. Their behavior is not the problem. That couldn't be. But those creators, they're terrible telling people to go no contact. Ha! Ellie, welcome. But you should all look that up. Look up the petition for getting people like me to not talk about toxic families. It's wild. Rhodes says the Cartman drama triangle is a recurring dysfunctional relationship pattern. Yeah, Dr. Salerno and I talked about that in one of our interviews, where participants cycle through the inauthentic roles of persecutor, blamer, rescuer, enabler, and victim, helpless acceptor of blame. That's a good one. I like that. I like that. I'm picking up what you're putting down there, Rhodes, fueled by a collective avoidance of personal responsibility. That's a good t-shirt. Fueled by a collective avoidance of personal responsibility. I love that. Wow, that's crazy. Yes, I thought so too, Narc Tactics. You see, the marks don't want to be exposed. We must be doing something right. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, and granted, and also I would say to some of those parents too, it's like, hey, if your kid truly is narcissistic, like, yeah, it must suck to have a narcissistic kid. Like you raised someone, or if you're the mother, you birthed someone only for them to be a narcissist. I mean, that's got to suck, but sometimes you still got to do what's best for you. And if they cut you off, maybe they've done you a favor as well. Which is, it's going to be hard for them to see it that way. I totally get it. But I've had many clients that were in that situation where they tell me about their kids, and it was a fiasco. You see, and ain't that a narcissistic move? They scared. Yes, exactly. They don't want to be exposed, because that's what we've all done. All of the creators that talk about this, we talk about their toxic behaviors. We talk about the things that they don't want exposed, and they don't like it. And there's a lot of, and usually the people that don't like it are the narcissists themselves. It's the same people that say, no contact should only be an extreme last resort, or you must give people 1,000 chances before you avoid them. It's like, dude, why are you telling someone else how they should be living? Like, no, I am all about empowering people. You empower yourselves to do what's best for you, whatever that is. I'm not here to tell you what is best for you. Only you can know that for sure. But I'll teach you about the concepts of practicing radical self-respect, and then you can take it from there. Of course, Phil Bradley's not late. My daughter's a narcissist. Yes, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, it's certainly not how you drew it up, right, Jolly? Like no one draws it up in their life plans. Oh, yes, I'm going to get married and have kids, and then one of them is going to be a narcissist that treats me terribly. Yes, no one draws it up like that. That's no one's preferred outcome for sure. But hey, especially when you consider the genetic component, it does happen. Right? If it's in the genes, it's in the genes sometimes. And it just is what it is. It is what it is. Constantly being told to move on feels like we get nowhere. Behaviors go unacknowledged. Well, give me an example of that, Black Sheep. Like what's a specific example of that? We can go over it. Rhodes, was her father one too? Yes, there you go. Yeah, so she's got her father's genes. And of course, though, when there's two narcissists like that, both of them probably don't think they are. They both probably think they're not the problem. So they'll go around and around like that. Because, Jolly, it's also the autistic thing, right? The autistic people that are with narcissists, that happens all of the time. Very common, if you ask me. So when you say black sheep to move on, like in what context move on? Move on from disrespect, or move on as in going no contact, or I'll be curious in what way you're thinking about it. Of course, Jolly. Of course they'll blame you. She's 41 on the 29th of November. Yeah, so she's like 6 months. She's 4 months older than me. Knight says, my family was more than happy to assign me the label of BPD, but I just think I have trauma that still never has been addressed and only ever get therapists who just chit chat every single session. Ah. So it sounds like what you would need is more of a therapist that's a little more of a go-getter, someone that's going to be a little more direct and assertive with you to get into the action items to really uncover it. And maybe even coaching could help you as well, because that's one of the things a therapist can struggle with, the action items sometimes, where it can turn into just the chit chat. And granted, there's a time for the chit chat, but then there's also a time for some action items. There's a time for some steps. What I see in my clients is sometimes, especially if there's mental illness or mood disorders involved, they can get stuck in loops. They get stuck in these mental loops that they can't get out of. And it's very difficult in those situations to help them, because for every solution you give them, they have 5 reasons why it won't work. Or they'll try, but then they'll loop back to this other self-limiting belief, and it becomes tough. But I understand it, because I'm someone who's had mental illness and mood disorders, and I look back at how I was, and I'm sure my behavior flabbergasted people back in the day. They're like, what the hell's wrong with this kid? Like, why is he running off to drink and do drugs? Why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? And the reason? Because I had undiagnosed autism and other mood disorders that I just didn't know about. So I just wasn't aware. But what I would tell that version of myself now is there's solutions out there for you that you just don't even know exist right now. And those solutions can really help you. You just don't know about them yet. And it's hard. It's hard when you don't know about something, because how can you have hope for something you don't know about? But that's also part of hope too, though, is hoping that there can be new developments. There can be things out there that can really work for you. And again, I'll probably get some pushback for this, but attitude is important too, especially when it comes to mental health and mental illness. Attitude is also important because, and it's the hardest to have a good attitude when you have those things going on. But I've noticed if you have a good attitude with it, or you at least try, you're more likely to find the things that will help. But if you don't, and I totally get it, when people are depressed, etc., it directly contributes to more of a negative outlook. But you have to try to push through that in a way, because a bad attitude plus mental illness, that is so hard to break out of. And there's almost nothing you can say to someone like that without trying to like push them through and push them to do something different. But it's so tough. I mean, that's what AA and NA would do for people back in the day. It would give them some tough love, because honestly, they needed it, because they might die without it. When there's substances and addictions involved, alcohol, people can die. Mama Black Sheep says, asking someone to stop texting me, but still texting me, asking for privacy. Mother says, we need to move on, meaning things need to resume exactly where we left off. Mother is critical, not nurturing, invasive. I want to be left alone, but we need to move on, according to her. So let me see here. I got to understand this. Who's the someone that you're asking to stop texting you? Your mother? So your mother is telling you to move on and she's the one doing these things? If that's the case, yeah, I mean, she's leaving you not much choice. Like you have to really distance yourself, I think. And sometimes distancing can just be emotional, I think, as well. It's easier if it's physical too, but like cutting yourself off from it, because if they refuse, what you're saying is basically sweeping it under the rug. That's what your mother wants to do. She wants to sweep the problems under the rug and not work on them. Knight says absolutely, and I understand that a lot of people might think that CBD is just chit chat, or do you mean CBT? But what's the use of a therapist being trained in EMDR or family systems if you chat about AI the whole time? Yeah, I mean, that can be a waste of a session. The only exception to that might be if they're trying to build rapport with you to get you to a place to trust them more, maybe. That's the only thing I can maybe think of with that. But it doesn't necessarily take the whole session to do that, right? Like over time, and that's the tough thing about it though, too, right? You got to build up trust with somebody, and not everyone is as trusting as others, right? Some people take a little more uh, of a gentle approach to get them to open up. There's a balance. I think a balance is key, I would say. I just need to find a new therapist and not give up. Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. If it's not working for you, then by all means, right? You go find someone that will help. And if you want, maybe you can communicate that to them and see what they say if you want to give them a chance. You're not under any obligation to give them a chance, but it's just something to consider. It is rare that family and friends will be interested or caring about our healing journey. Very true. Unfortunately, very true. You have to be your own advocate and keep the therapist on task these days. You are correct. Another one of my clients was saying that exact thing about a social worker. It's just that well, here's the thing. Not every professional has a lot of experience with these kinds of issues, especially narcissism, right? But they are trying, they're learning what they learned in a textbook. They learned what they learned under their supervision of their professional above them. But not everyone's like me that has personal experience in all of it. Not everyone's like my friend Kelly, who has that personal experience, or Adriana, or Marcella, or Dr. Salerno. You fill in the blank. Yeah, not giving up is key, I think. Resilience. That's the fifth step of change, is that resilience part, because it's always going to get tough. And with every situation, right? Say if you're with a bad therapist, like the first thing would be, I shouldn't say bad therapist, but a therapist that you don't think is helpful. The first thing would be to think, well, one, can I be showing up differently here? It's like there's something that I could communicate that maybe would help me to get more of my needs met here. That's one. And then you do that, and then you see how it goes from there. And if it doesn't change, now you know your answer. Now you know your answer, and you move on. But the ultimate thing about picking a therapist would be, who do you feel emotionally safe with? Who do you trust to have your best interests in mind? Who's going to help you? That's number one. Because if you're not with somebody that is emotionally safe, you don't feel safe with them, you have to trust your gut about that, and you got to get out of there if that's not the case. This too shall pass, Ellie. I get it though. I totally get it. I posted today to Facebook, if you're going through hell, keep going. Because sometimes when it really gets rough, those cornball sayings, they do really help me. So when you're really in a rough spot, have some of those sayings for yourself. Yeah, like this too shall pass. If I'm going through hell, keep going. Yeah, Winston, I think he did say that, right? And also, Ellie, remembering to laugh. Laughter, I think, along with music and art, are some of those things that is the best medicine. And that's what I should have mentioned last night, too, when I was talking about Brene Brown. I was breaking down her appearance on the Diary of a CEO. They were talking about things that transcend the polarities. And another one I could have said was laughter, comedians, funny stuff. Now, granted, unfortunately, some of the divisiveness has snuck into comedy as well, but ideally it wouldn't be there. Well, actually, I don't know. I don't even know if ideally. There's always been an element of politics in comedy. Look at George Carlin. Well, Winston Churchill also said he's a funny boy, that Winston. There was a woman that really disliked him. And I don't know what she said. She said to him, "If I was your wife, I would poison your tea." And Winston said, "If you were my wife, I'd drink it." I thought that was classic. Music and art are helping. Finding others like us here helps. My cats help. We know what, Ellie? Some of the best advice also is paradoxical in a way, but trying to help others more, where you go out of your way to maybe volunteer or just do something for somebody else. Because as Ralph Waldo Emerson said, we can't genuinely help others without also helping ourselves. And that's true for me in these live streams here. Like, I remind myself of all sorts of things I've forgotten. Just like in the process of the stream of consciousness, you start remembering things. You remember things you've read, remember things you've learned. So it's definitely not a one-way street. Some people get concerned about that with consultations as well. Oh, it's just a one-way street. You're helping me. It's like, and I say to them, no, I learn all sorts of things from the people that are my clients, and it gives me like good ideas of like topics to help people with. So it's definitely not one way. Yeah, it's one of the best ways to go. Definitely one of the best ways to go. And so here's the other part about it. Sometimes what helps most also is annoying to hear. That's also true too. For example, in AA and NA, they would say a grateful addict would never use. So what they're saying is, if you have gratitude for your life, you're not going to do certain things. And to which I get it. But when you're in a bad spot, the gratitude is the last word you want to hear. You're like, get the fuck out of here, gratitude. But that's when it's probably the most important too. 30 miles a week. That's damn good. The last couple times I've been running, my runs are not as good anymore. I went out of it. Well, I changed up some of my supplement routine. I lost some of my strength. My cardio went down. My strength didn't go down, but for some reason, the cardio got a lot harder. Yeah, it really is. Sometimes it feels like the only way to healthily get the stress and emotions out. Dude, the gym and running both. I mean, running in particular, because like running's hard. Like running to me is harder than weight training. The only thing harder than running is sprints and Tabata, because that's a fast twitch. Like I do a lot of slow twitch running, which also gets hard because I'm not small anymore. I'm over 200 pounds, so I'm lugging a lot of weight around, like mostly muscle weight, I would say, but I'm still lugging it, and it makes those runs tough. So I don't run like I usually do 2 to 2.5 miles, which is not even that far at a time. And I'll do that like a few times a week. I even give thanks during stress with nut jobs. Then you've got a good attitude, Ellie. You're doing good. I'm 5'10", 5'11". I can't say I'm 6 foot. Wah, wah. Yeah, but without exercise, I don't know where I would be. Like, that's like my me time. Like, I need to. It's going to be one of the things I probably struggle with as I get older, like not being able to do as much anymore. I'm not there yet. I'm hoping not to get there too soon, but we'll see. Because I'm 40 years old now. And I don't feel like that much age hasn't gotten to me that much yet. Now, granted, like my body's different. I've probably built on more muscle. In my mid 20s, I was more of a runner. So I was much more thin back then. Yeah, it's the endorphins. The endorphins pumping. Yeah, I mean, I feel young. I feel young, so I can't complain. Can't complain. But age catches up to us all, doesn't it? Age will come. Age comes for us all. And then you can listen to Pink Floyd Time, and it's a thing. It's a thing. The other thing I was thinking about how important sleep is. I mean, we spend around 1/3 of our life asleep. So it's like you want to get your sleep right because if you live 60 years, you might be asleep for 20 years if you sleep 8 hours a night. That's insane. And especially for me, being on the spectrum, there's something about not getting enough sleep that really gets me because I think the GABA system is impacted when you have autism. I think that's part of the reason you have the anxiety and the awkwardness, in my opinion. But that also impacts your sleep. And if I don't get enough sleep, I'm just not recharged properly. And I can really be a crankopotamus. It's out of control. So it's awful. Like I can do it, but I'll absolutely be a grump and I'll absolutely be miserable. And yeah, I could probably be a jerk and sometimes too. But is that an excuse? No, not really. It's not an excuse. Perhaps an explanation. But it doesn't mean it's good either, right? And that's the difference between me and others. Like when I'll call out a problematic behavior, it's like I'll admit if I do a problematic behavior, that's a problematic behavior. I don't want to pass for it because I'm this way. I still acknowledge it's not good. But some people seem to want to pass. Like, oh, I have this issue. So I do this problematic behavior because I have this issue and I want to pass because of it. You shouldn't be saying anything bad about it. And it's like, dude, that's not how it works. Like, I'll fully acknowledge when I mess up. I strive not to do those things, but I fully recognize some things might not be good. Some behaviors aren't good. I pray and ask for guidance and to show me the lesson. I love it. I used to have that problem with my daughter's guy friends. What problem was that? Oh, the MILF problem? The MILF problem. Is this stream sponsored by MILFs? Sponsored by Pornhub MILFs? Is there no men in this chat? George? I don't think there is any men in this chat that I know of. There was one before, I think. Knight? Is Knight a man? I love it. I mean, that's the other thing too. I was talking to Kelly about this the other day. Sponsored by Histrionics. It's sex drive is one of those things that when you're not in that mood anymore or sex drive isn't a thing, the things you do and think about when you're actually in like a horny mood is like completely ridiculous. Like you look back at it and you're like, what the heck was this? It's so stupid. But then when you're not into the mood, you're like, oh my God, like that was so silly, such silliness. But when you're feeling it, Phil Bradley, how could I forget? I forgot because you weren't commenting. That's why. But there's several men here, which is good. It's like a cat, Ellie. So that's what they say for men, right? Women can be like a cat. When you don't want them around, then they're around. Then when you do want them around, they run away. There's an element of truth in that. There's an element of truth in that. I mean, because what is it real? Why is it really? Because, and I get it, because I can be that way too. If someone's trying to smother me and trying to give me attention when I don't want it, I don't like that one bit. And that's how it is for women. When guys are like charging into battle, trying to get with them, I would think the same thing they think. I'm like, get the fuck away from me. Like, don't want to deal with this. Like, you're coming on too strong. But when people are more chill, it gives people the freedom and the space to kind of be more comfortable and be like, okay, this is fun now. This is not some sort of forced thing. It's more relaxed. I'm free to come and go as I please. And that's something a lot of guys really mess up, I think. Yes, run, don't walk to the nearest exit, Jolly, when that happens. There's some weird mass consciousness thing that once you're taken, you get more attention, but maybe that also has to do with having more confidence. It's a combination of both, I think. Because there is an element of a man that has a wedding ring on. There's certain women, they're going to find that man more attractive. Very rarely will those women admit it. But some of them, they like trying to take the man away from somebody else. Some of them get a thrill from that. Some narcissistic women get a thrill from that, for example. But the wedding band also signals things. It signals, oh, well, some woman likes this guy. Probably means he's got a good job. Probably means he's able to have functional sexual organs. And it just says positive things about them. So that's part of it. But it's also because when you're with a woman a lot, you become more comfortable with women and you have a little bit more confidence as well. And women notice that. Women are very good at picking up on men's energy because it's the one thing you can't fake. You can't fake your energy. And so women sense that. Women sense that even via text, but especially in the dating world, they sense it. They sense it from a mile away. I never want somebody no leftovers. I agree. Amen. Being married boosts social status. Yeah, I've been hearing more about how marriage is more of almost a luxury now. They say only the top men are getting married, which I do see that trend. I think less people are getting married than ever now. One of those human conditions we want what we can't have. Yes. Human nature. There's a little bit of human nature in all of us. Women and men both. And you know the other thing, night while you're here, even though, and the women will appreciate this here too. So much of what I hear from male clients sometimes, I'll listen to the issues, and granted, it's a different thing when the woman's narcissist or borderline, whatever. But a lot of times, the woman doesn't feel safe and she doesn't feel loved, and then she acts out from that. So, given that it's not a toxic personality disordered woman, it's like if you can do things for that woman where she feels loved and safe, a lot of problems are going to go away. But a lot of the problems that occur are because she doesn't feel loved and she doesn't feel safe. And then you'll see her be a little more moody and irritable, and she'll come at you about things. And I see it. But when a guy's in it and he doesn't know about these concepts, it can be really difficult for them. But that's where I think men would benefit from learning about positive masculine containment. You can listen to Teal Swan about it. And there's a reason why so many narcissistic guys do well is because they mimic some of the things that women really like. They don't do it genuinely, but they mimic it. And it works. They mimic what the women want. The narcissist controlling behavior mimics positive masculine containment. Positive masculine containment is when you can't hurt the woman without also hurting yourself, and you provide a safe space for her to be herself, to grow, and just to be emotionally safe with you. Every woman wants that, but they don't necessarily know how to articulate it sometimes. Males are also getting a ton of different opinions these days. This is true. Like the epidemic of channels telling men that the more attention you give a woman, the less she will value you, on and on. Yeah, there's some of that going on in the red pill world, right? For example. Or you'll get the MGTOW world, the people telling them all to exit stage left, turn over the table, or whatever the hell they would say, right? And then there's the people that, well, there's a lot of guys that are left out now. But I think what men would need to do, it's good to make sure you're listening to people that have your best interest in mind. Because there's some people that don't necessarily have your best interest in mind. They'll sell things to you and they'll want you to watch their content, but it doesn't really do anything for your life. That's a big thing too. But it's just harder now. I mean, this true. There's some legitimate gripes out there as well. It's going to be harder for a lot of men because there's just more options for everyone. And when there's more options for everyone and less constraints, there's going to be less men selected. That's just always how it's been. That's always been how it's been forever. It's just more so because of social media. But what makes the man is, how do you handle that knowing that? Some guys crumble and they become a woe's me Eeyore. I wouldn't recommend that. But I would acknowledge the difficulties, but then try to help them to really live the best version of themselves. Teach them about the masculine containment. And again, with the too much attention thing, the games, if you have to focus on playing a game too much, it's probably not going to last anyway. But for me, the best relationships occur when they just happen because you're in a good spot. When you're in a good spot, you practice radical self-respect, you're confident, you're assertive, you're living your best life, you're on your mission and purpose, things work out. But there's this paradoxical effect where if you focus too much on dating, you can overthink it. And then when you overthink it, you become a little more awkward and clumsy. It's kind of a weird thing. But it's like the more you focus on it, the worse it can go sometimes. But again, I'm all for learning from all sorts of people. Take what you like and learn and leave the rest. Yeah, Tate's just, he's become a clown now, right? But back in the day, I don't think he was wrong about everything he said back in the day. He's a smart person, but he's turned into a clown because he's turned into the character that he is. And now he's just exploited. He's exploited the dudes in his, what would they call that? The war room or whatever the hell it was. In the words of my Nigerian friend, game recognize game, real recognize real. You reminded me of the Boondocks. Real recognize real, and you looking kind of unfamiliar right now. I love that, Ellie. It is the journey, not the destination. Absolutely. And that's why they say patience is the ability to keep a good attitude while waiting. Because Andrew Tate is actually a chess master too. Or because his dad was a chess pro and he's actually pretty good at chess. But he went off the deep end with things. I don't think really anyone takes him seriously anymore. Although Piers Morgan did. Piers Morgan has had him on the show a couple times. And surprisingly, I guess, Joe Rogan's never had Andrew Tate on. That kind of surprises me, but he didn't. Chris Williamson was just on Joe Rogan today, or it just got released today. And by the way, people, anyone that you want me to interview, let me know. I'm able to get most people. Most people that you throw out there, I'll be able to get. They're within arm's reach. The bigger I get, the more likely people will say yes. I love chess too. Life can be like a game of chess. But actually, you know what they say? Annie Duke, the poker player, said life is more like poker than chess, because in life, like poker, you can do things wrong and still win. There's an element of luck. In chess, there's really not much luck. The skilled player usually wins. The better player wins. And she was saying that's not how life is. That's not always how it is in life. You would like it to be that way, but it's just not always true. There's an element of luck in some of this stuff. But I also believe that the harder you work and the better attitudes you have, you make your own luck to an extent. I think that's true too. But also, I can't deny there are some people that have bad luck too. I think that also happens. If you do not enjoy being around the person, it will not work. Correct. Now, Jolly will probably relate to this, but as an autistic person, I need space from people. Like too much of somebody, even if I get along with them, might be too much sometimes. Like I need my distance. I need a little bit of a cool down. Now, granted, depending on who it is, I need less of that cool down than others. But I'm a person that needs to recharge by themselves. It is Ellie. I tried it a little after my husband died. I just felt happier not dating. I don't recommend that for others. Hey, I mean, you do what's best for you, Jolly. That's what I say. Yeah, I mean, I figured you'd be like me. Seems like you're like me in a lot of things. Yeah, I mean, some people jump right into dating and some don't. I mean, but grief's not going to be a one size fits all process. Everyone's going to do it a little bit differently. I don't necessarily think there's a right or wrong answer to it, but you do it imperfectly and you just try to keep on going. One of my favorite shows about grief is 6 Feet Under. I think I was talking about to you about that show, but it's a great show. A great show indeed. Ugh. I'm about to lose my voice here. But all right. Might be time to wrap this up here in a little bit. I'm running out of voice. But any other questions any of you have here before we rock and roll here? Oh, Psychobabble with Dr. Spear is an interesting channel, Jared. You might like a chat with her. Interesting. Let's write that down. Now, I thought you were going to say there's this one dude who has a book called Psychobabble. I see his account on Instagram all the time. I don't remember his name. But he's a character, this guy. He wrote a book called Psychobabble, and he kind of talks about myths and things that he doesn't like in the social media helping world. I don't even know how I feel about him. I think some parts of him I don't like. But just because I don't like him in some ways doesn't mean he would be a bad guest. I think some of his attitude rubs me the wrong way, but it doesn't mean he's wrong about everything. Like, I try to separate it. And yeah, he might not be my favorite person, but it could still be an interesting discussion. I don't know, Ellie. I very well might, but it also depends on how the day goes, It might be helpful for people to have a place to come for the holidays. I knew you did, Jolly. I know you love 6 Feet Under. Mama Black Sheep does too? I love it. Who is your favorite character? But it might be a good idea to try to do a live tomorrow. Good old on the old Turkey Day. Oh, right. So those are your suggestions, though. Remember the tools for dealing with a dysfunctional family: Gray Rock, calm and boring; Biff, brief, informative, friendly, and firm; Do not jade, justify, argue, defend, or explain; Don't get sucked into any emotional engagements; You're under no obligations to have to talk about anything you don't want to; Have your boundaries planned out in advance; Have your answers to difficult questions planned out in advance; Know how you're going to respond to things, because half of success is preparation. All of that. Unless there are gender specific traumas that a patient might benefit from someone of the opposite sex as a provider, is there really any reason why a male shouldn't have a male therapist? Um, no, I recommend for men to have a male therapist, because I ultimately think that men will understand other men's problems better than most women. Not 100%, but better than most. Now, that doesn't mean there's nothing to learn from women. I've talked to many women here that they're like, for example, there's a woman I interviewed that was a dominatrix, and she had a very interesting perspective on helping men. And I thought that was interesting. There's things to learn. But I think ultimately, men usually are better off with a male therapist. The problem is there's not very many male therapists. I think the field is 80 to 85% women. The mother, Ruth. Ruth is an old school woman. I like the father. I like Ruth's dead husband. His character was cool. I liked Nate even too, even though he got a lot of hate. He got a lot of hate from the 6 Feet Under subreddit because he cheated and whatnot. But it's a great show. I thought that show was great. And that was a golden era of HBO. Sopranos, The Wire, and 6 Feet Under, all on at the same time. What a great era of television. And you know what the common denominator was? No social media yet. It's the best of both worlds. The internet plus no social media, plus no cell phone in your pocket. Classic. Oh, there might have been cell phones back then, right? Was there? I guess there was, but it wasn't until the social media aspect, the internet on the phone piece, that really changed it all. Yeah, he got with the Mormon, or the what the hell was it? The Puritan. What was the one? The daughter of that guy, the daughter of Ruth's other husband. That guy's a good actor too. The tall dude, classic voice that guy has. You don't see too many voices like that anymore. But the father was great in that. He has some good scenes with all of them, David and whomever. Classic show. And I think they also got the gay part right too, because I think the producer of the show was gay, so he wasn't like faking how gay people would be. It's like, no, this is how they would really be. So it was more authentic in that way. And one of the cool parts about the show was it wasn't cringe though with it. Like you see gay people today in a show and it's like they're trying to force it down your throat or something. It's like they're trying to make it just doesn't seem genuine. There's something off. But back then, when I watched 6 Feet Under, I never thought that once. And granted, it's not from lack of like seeing gay things in there. There was a lot. But I just never thought it. It just never came to the forefront because it was just natural. I'm new to this channel. Have you spoken to Dr. Ramani before? No, I have not spoken to Dr. Ramani. She might be one of the few people that might be above my reach right now, but we'll see. She goes into the big channels, right? I broke her down on when she was on the Diary of a CEO. But she goes on the big boys, Jay Shetty, Mel Robbins, Lewis Howes, those guys. She goes on that tour. Rhodes says, if you guys are looking for more contemporary shows, The White Lotus and Succession are both excellent. I've heard about Succession. And my friend was telling me all about the season opener of Stranger Things tonight. Now, I've never been into Stranger Things, but a lot of people seem to love it. A lot of people love their Stranger Things, but I've never watched it. But it's been on for a long time. It's been on for almost a decade. So they've really stretched it out, these 5 seasons here. All right. All right, everybody. If I don't see you all tomorrow, you all have a happy Thanksgiving if you're in this nook of the wood and celebrate Thanksgiving. So Jolly, Rhodes, Knight, Ellie, Phil Bradley, and Jolly. Yep. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Glad you were all here for the stream. Hopefully you were able to learn something new or have some tips for dealing with the dysfunctional family tomorrow. Preferably you'll be no contact, but if not, you're now armed. You are armed and ready. You got it, Knight. Glad you came by. You're welcome back anytime. We got a good flock of black sheep here, we'll say. Right, Mama? Black sheep there too? All right, everybody. Till next time, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. But you can stay on the channel. Watch some of the other longer form content and the interviews. There's tons of good interviews to go through. Dr. Simon, Dr. Salerno, H.G. Tudor, Dr. Denise, Marcella from Beyond the Bruise, Kelly and I, Mark Eatonson. Who else? Meredith Miller. There's a bunch of good ones out there to check out. So please do. All right. Over and out, everybody.